Thank you very much. Wow. Sit, please. Gentlemen, would you wait for a mic?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to the panelists for an excellent set of presentations. I'm really tempted with the number of questions and comments, but I'll confine myself to 2 or 3. Number one, there's a clear temptation, and I can understand the temptation of sort of going after ballistic missiles as an issue vis-a-vis in the Iran context. But it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it may actually give a free pass, an easy way out for Iran, partly because there is no equivalent of the NPT for missiles. The only way you can actually go that route is through the UN Security Council, and that's problematic. And we've seen that in the North Korean case, it's not conducive. Second, in that context, it would also open up the Saudi missiles, the Turkish missiles, and it would open up an entire Pandora's box, which the Iranians could use. Third, Iran may actually circumvent this whole issue and go down the cruise missile route, which, by the way, they've already started. And so, we can talk about ballistic missiles for, till the cows come home, but, they're already, we may have missed the boat in that. So that's on the ballistic missile thing. While I can see the temptation, I would say, there may be some reservations. Second, I think it's, we sort of tend to look at nuclear energy capacity as a potential, for nuclear weapon capability. It depends on how that's done. So, clearly in the Turkish and the Saudi case, depending on how that's developed, it may or may not be the case. A good example of this is, again, the Gulf. The UAE, for example, has a very interesting model where they've basically outsourced everything, the production, development, everything. So it may be a model to sort of look at the other countries. Third, and very, very quickly, extended deterrence vis-a-vis Pakistan. I don't actually think that this is something in the future. I would actually argue it already exists. In fact, Pakistan doesn't need to move its nukes to Saudi Arabia. It can quite easily extend the deterrence from Pakistan. In some ways, it may make better sense for the Pakistanis to do that and offer. And contrary to perspectives, that kind of an arrangement may already exist. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruno.
Okay, 2 quick points. First, Emily, thanks for quoting the piece we did on PMD. Let me be clear about something. I can't imagine that a full, complete, final public disclosure by Iranians of all PMDs is a required element of a satisfying deal from a European standpoint. There are things that we all know we would need to finesse with. Because if we are asking for a South Africa option, then what we are asking for is, in fact, the end of the Islamic Republic. Now, I assume we will all be content with the end of the Islamic Republic. But we have to be realistic. If that's how the Iranians interpret our calls for more for transparency on PMDs, then there won't be anything. It's more a comment than a question. Then for Galia and Yoel, first of all, I would challenge your expression arms race. The Saudis bought their missiles in the late 80s. They waited 20 plus years to possibly procure more modern missiles. By any reasonable definition, that's not racing. It's something different. I think if we want to understand the dynamics of the missile procurement in this region, we have to find different words. Second, I completely agree with Paul. By far the most likely option for Pakistani-Saudi nuclear cooperation is extended deterrence, the Asian model, not the European model. Third, a question to you, and I'm done. Since you've spoken about Turkey and Saudi Arabia, do you think it's realistic to imagine any form of cooperation between them on the issues you've discussed?
Thank you. Yes, please. And then...
Thanks, Patricia Lewis from Chatham House. Camille, I wanted to talk to you about the zone. Thank you very much for an excellent run through what's going on. So So if there's no meeting in Helsinki before the NPT in 2015, then the review conference will be an absolute mess. It may be an absolute mess anyway, but this would definitely be prerequisite for a complete disaster of meeting. And it may well have longer term repercussions. I mean, what I hear from the Egyptians and other Arab states is they won't pull out of the NPT, but they will no longer think of the NPT as working in their interests. And there will be a slow, steady disengagement. That's not a threat that they'll develop nuclear weapons or anything like that, not at all. But that there will be a lack of enthusiasm for supporting it. They've kind of got to the end of that road, I think, if it doesn't go ahead. Having said that, they're insisting that the mandate for Helsinki remains as it was in 2010. But underneath that mandate on WMD is a whole set of possibilities for discussing regional security. But it would have to come underneath that mandate for the zone. And one of those is CBMs. That's the clear part of the agenda that the regional security measures could be discussed. And it seems to me that that's a very interesting equation that creative people could really use to have a very good discussion underneath the mandate for this Helsinki conference. And what's obvious is that parties need a clear agenda for Helsinki, but they also need to be very clear about the outcome. I don't think anyone's going to go into this meeting unless they're clear about the outcome. And my biggest concern for it is that everyone I speak to who's been involved in this has quite low expectations, but is also very comfortable with failure and the idea of failure and the idea of blaming. I think you brought that out. And so my question to you is, do you think that Egypt's new appointment of a new interlocutor for the new round of talks in Geneva is significant, and in what way?
Dr. Lubin, and then the lady in the back. I'm afraid that after that we'll have to...
Thank you to the panel. Wonderful. A comment and a question. The first comment is to Dr. Landau. I think that her pessimism is an inborn pessimism in the trying to put legalcy and transparency in the world of nuclear military developments. I think that there has not been any transparency in that in almost any other place, and surely not even in the Middle East. That's a comment, because I understood that you were a bit pessimistic about the evolution or the way in which legalcy or bad wrongdoings would be or are being developed or used by a certain country, in this case Iran. And I can say that I believe that you are right, but I don't think that this will change a bit the evolution of things. I mean, things will develop with or without transparency. And I am going now to Avner. Avner, sometimes I believe that between deterrence and aggressiveness, there is not a very large gap. You start thinking in terms of deterrence, and you may have to think that the strength of the deterrence will depend on the strength of the potential strength of your aggressiveness. But now to the question. I understand that you are a senior member of the Institute for National Security. In the different scenarios that you have thought of you thought of the possibility that we are already late, that they already have a minimal, small element. And in that case, in that scenario, I am sure that you also have had to think of different ways of facing that situation. And there, I think, your picture of the 4 or 5 men with guns pointing, I saw that the length, the strength of the guns were different. And I saw that one was extremely, I would say, strong. He would have surely killed the man that was in the center. But I would say that that would maybe depend, and I would like to ask you if in your scenarios you consider it. You see, the man that was pointing with the large, very strong arm, I heard him saying that he was confronting a fundamentalistic, mystic opposition. But there is another position. No.
No, we simply,
don't have time.
the clock is...
But there is another position that says that the man in the middle maybe has behind him some rational and logical attitudes that we won't agree with, that they are well faced, and that they are not fundamentalistic or mystic only. Thank you.
I'm sorry, because of the time,
Time constraint.
I think we'll have to take, I want to, my own one comment. I put it to you as a question, not as a remark, that no deal with Iran or a bad deal with Iran will kill off any process of WMD free zone in the Middle East. We'll take the things as usual in the reverse order, please.
On the impact of the Iran deal on the Middle East process, I agree. I mean, I'm not saying this is a wise thing or not a wise thing, but I think it is the case. We have to be honest about it. If the assessment in this country and in other places is that the Iran deal is a poor deal or a bad deal, it's even worse than having a no deal, because with a no deal option you can sort of suggest that the Middle East WMD free zone is a way to address the Iranian problem, but I think it will weaken the hand of those who argue in favor of such a process and make it extraordinarily difficult. On Patricia's point on the NPT, if I were cynical, and there are lots of people who are cynical, people would say, you know what, if the 2015 conference fails, 1 out of 2 NPT conference fail in any case, so what's the big deal, and do we really care? I'm not sure this is a wise approach, because of course first, if you start from this, you're bound to fail. So we should give it a chance. I guess the key is indeed on the clarity of the outcome. If we pretend the Helsinki conference has to come out with a draft treaty, that's not going to happen. If we see it as part of a process that allows to start thinking about what could be the tools, the ways, and things like that, I think we need to be extremely open-minded. I don't think that even in the best of all worlds, the end goal might be a treaty. It might be a set of CBMs and a set of decisions taken to join other treaties. So you can be. I think we should be very open on this. And Egypt, new interlocutor, difficult to read. I think it might be an attempt not to appear as the spoiler of the process, because at the previous PrepCom there was this image that was that started spinning of a behavior that was sort of killing the process. So that might be it's easier if you change individuals to change course slightly. I guess the paradox, what makes things extraordinarily difficult, is that in that whole process, historically, Egypt has been the Arab player that has been trying to build compromise and consensus on this. And in the recent years, it has been, and including vis-à-vis more radical Arabs. The issue is how has this been evolving? And in many ways, Egypt has become, on this particular issue, more radical than many fellow Arabs. And this is something that is complicated to manage for the group dynamics, let's say.
Thank you. Yes, Yoel and
Sidi,
Dalia, if you want.
in the question of civilian nuclear development, yes, the UAE model, the UAE probably will be the first Arab country to develop civilian nuclear reactors for electricity. It's already ongoing, the building in Baraka near the Saudi borders, and they did it in record time. The UAE case will be studied for many years now. They overcome logistical, technical, all kinds of difficulties really in the record time. And we're going to see probably in 2017, maybe before, at least the first reactor already connected to the grid at the UAE. The Saudis are far behind. The Americans tried to do what they called in the beginning, when they signed the agreement with the UAE in 2009, making it a symbol, the gold standard. The problem that the Saudis don't accept so far the terms that the UAE accepted fairly easily, meaning not enriching, the right to enrich. This is an obstacle. There's an ongoing negotiation between the Saudis and the Americans in the last 5 years on that subject alone. So this is something that we should watch closely. The Saudis are not the Emiratis. About Pakistan extended deterrence, totally agree. You don't need to move missiles and personnel into Saudi soil. But if they will do that to some extent, I don't think either the Saudis, I think the Pakistani can care less, but the Saudis do care. They will not think that this is any violation of the NPT. If the missiles and the weapon will be on Pakistani hands, with Pakistani soldiers. This is one thing. The other thing is Pakistan, you need to understand, Pakistan, you probably know that, very close cooperation with the Saudis. As we speak now, you have Pakistani soldiers in the Arabian Peninsula doing many things. In the beginning of the Arab Spring, when the Saudis felt that they probably are going to have problems in the eastern province, they called Islamabad and they want them to send soldiers. It happened in the past. They had for more than a decade 2 brigades, etc. So this cooperation is very, very extensive. Bruno, lack of a better word, I would stick to the arms race, and I'll tell you why. It's not just ballistic missiles, the Saudis, also cruise missiles. And they started, they requested, probably received already from the Brits and the Americans. This is one thing. More than that, they are building and expanding their command and control. This is dramatic what they've done. We have little information in open source what the Saudis are doing in that, but from what I know, this is very dramatic, at least what they're trying to do in this regard, command and control and ballistic missiles. Moreover, the word arms race has got to do with timing. I mean, they can change their missiles 10 years ago, but they started doing that as the Iranian, that's the problem with Iran escalated. And I'm talking about the year 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008. Then they approached the Chinese, and apparently with American knowing and even facilitating as the reports say, some of those acquisitions from the Chinese. Before they didn't have this desire to expand and to replace some of the missiles, and these days they do. So this is why we use the word arms race.
Okay, Galia? No, it's okay.
It's okay. So very quickly, regarding the civilian nuclear programs, you're of course right. Many countries have a civilian nuclear program. It's not so easy to move from a civilian nuclear program to a military one. However, with regard to the Turks, although they don't have concrete plans for enrichment, they don't have concrete programs. The deals that were signed with Russia and Japan don't deal with enrichment of Turkey. But Erdogan has made a point to state that Turkey reserves the right for enrichment. So that's the only thing about this. And also, you know, there's all these scientists going to Moscow and getting education there. So some things are going on. With regard to arms race, basically you all covered the issue. Again, I agree with you that there wasn't an arms race regarding the short-term, the short-range missiles. Regarding the medium-term, we say that maybe things are different. The pace is accelerating, so maybe we're in the beginning of the arms race. With regard to Turkey's plans to acquire long-range ballistic missiles, then the reports that were leaked from this meeting of Erdogan and the defense industry was that Erdogan was saying, Iran has this capability, why don't we have it? So that's a dynamic of an arms race. And lastly, a very interesting question about Turkey and Gulf cooperation. We didn't have time to really discuss it in depth, but both of us, our instinct was saying no way. I think we reached the height of Turkish Gulf cooperation regarding Syria, and now we are in a crisis between these two, especially between Turkey and Saudi Arabia, about their different position regarding Egypt. There are many reasons for much mistrust between the two, and also they are both newcomers to the nuclear realm, so there's not so much interest there in cooperating. And also we have the Saudi special relationship with Pakistan, and we have the Turkish membership in NATO, and that these two things are very much, I think, will inhibit cooperation.
Thank you for your question, because I didn't address the problem of rationality, and there is a problem. Regardless, let's say that all actors are rational, according to their rationale, of course. I'm concerned that we may find ourselves in the middle of an escalation unintendedly, because this dynamics is very complex, because there are no de-escalation mechanisms in this region, not yet, and because we simply do not know enough about this kind of dynamics. And I hope to contribute my skills and understanding in the next summer when I will start my PhD. Thank you.
Thanks.
That was short.
Emily.
Okay, I'm leaving CEDAW for last. First, Bruno. I know you made a comment, but I still want to comment on your comment. First of all, I mentioned your article because I think people should read it, not necessarily meaning that you and I see things exactly the same. So thanks for the clarification, and I encourage people to read it. And I also encourage people to read the future article that Ephraim, Shimon Stein, and I will write on this topic, and then we'll clarify where we are on the PMDs. But just to say very quickly, first of all, there are many reasons why the PMDs or the work on warhead needs to be part of a comprehensive deal. It's not only what I mentioned here in my talk. It goes to the issue of verification very fundamentally. You can't verify what's going on from now until the future if you don't have on the table how Iran was cheating in the past. It has to be part of the comprehensive deal for that reason as well. But here I was making the point that this game of compellence goes back to the NPT. It all rests on the fact that Iran did make a violation of the NPT and that it was working on a military nuclear capability in contradiction to the commitment it made according to the NPT. And that's the basis for conducting this negotiation or this game of compellence. And therefore, for a very fundamental reason of conducting better and more effective negotiations, it has to start from the same starting point. I find it bizarre that the discussion is going on where one side is saying, you know, you've done this stuff stuff and you have to stop, and the other side is allowed to continue with the narrative that they haven't done all that stuff. You need to have the same starting point. So that was the point. Patricia, also, you didn't direct your comment to me, but I do want to make a comment on your comment. You mentioned the CBMs and, that this will be part of the process. The issue is much more fundamental than CBMs being part of the process. There's a fundamental disagreement between, let's say, it boils down maybe to Egypt and Israel, although I don't think it's completely just along those lines. And the difference is between a concept of arms control. Do you see arms control only in terms of pressuring a state to disarm itself of whatever you suspect it has? Or do you see arms control as fundamentally about improving regional security relations in the Middle East? And there's a real difference here. ACRS, the arms control and regional security talks, were about creating regional security. That's the way to go with arms control. But in any case, what needs to be found is some way to bridge that. And saying that CBMs will be thrown into a discussion that's actually all about Israel and the nuclear realm is not going to do it. So that's just on that. Finally, Sidhu, your point is very well taken. Usually when people say ballistic missile issue should not be part of the comprehensive deal, they say it's because these negotiations have only been about enrichment and all the nuclear aspects. So don't throw something new in. And I don't accept that argument because ballistic missiles or the delivery mechanism is part and parcel of having a nuclear capability. I mean, you can't say that these ballistic missiles are irrelevant to the nuclear issue because they're non-nuclear, which is the Iranian case. You're making a different case and saying that putting that in can come back to haunt you because they'll move to cruise missiles, because, it'll raise questions. And I think your points are well taken. I would say that ballistic missiles are in the 2010 UN Security Council resolution on Iran, although I was recently told by someone close to the Obama administration that they feel that they sort of threw that in at the last minute and now it's coming back to bite them a little bit because now, it's in the resolution, so you have to deal with it. I would say, bottom line, if there was one issue that Emily Landau would concede, in this negotiation, it would probably be the ballistic missiles, but not on any of the other critical elements. Thank you.
Please join me in thanking the panel for a very interesting presentations, and please be back here at 2 o'clock sharp. Thanks.